Love is giving what you do not have to someone who doesn't want it. That's a Lacan saying, and it so strongly came to my mind recently in the group. I got back from New York in the AGPA conference where I presented on Buddhism, group psychotherapy, and I thought I'd make a epilogue. When I got back, I had a new member join the group, and we were going around and people were talking. We covered kind of group norms regularly and sharing the talking time, put your thoughts and feelings into words, and think about yourself, think about others, think about your thoughts, think about your feelings. I try not to overdo it, which was a challenge I had with, in Buddhism, they say realized monk can picture 100 tankas simultaneously in detail in their mind. And sometimes when I would give instructions in group, I make it too long for how one should be in group. So I think just notice yourself, notice others, occasionally say something that would be fine. But this member came and we did some general introductions and went over group norms. And then people started talking, and someone was talking about their divorce. Someone was talking about the great uncertainty of their academic life. Someone else was talking about the pain of being an empty nester. And the new member sat there really, really quietly and looked kind of sad. And I asked, "Oh, you have any thoughts or feelings about or what's going on? Does any of this resonate with you?" Right? Building cohesion, I usually highlight some similarity without eventually ignoring differences. And the member said, like, "Is this what you do in here?" And another group member said, "Yeah, this is what we do in here. We sometimes talk about good things, but we spend a lot of time talking about things that aren't going right, or things that are confusing, or things that are painful, ways we connect with each other, but oftentimes ways we don't connect with each other, and ways we misunderstand each other." And they were like, "Oh, I was expecting something different." And we explored that in some way. But in the group, and I think one member said that sometimes we talk about things and it's really helpful that relationships seem to get better, or people navigate employment situations, or figure out a way to be with a aging parent or a child that's much more constructive. And then sometimes we don't make progress. And they talked about a member who had been in the group and had gotten cancer and had passed away. And a lot of sadness occurred in the group, and that we couldn't do anything to help her. Well, maybe we helped her. We were with her until she couldn't come anymore, but we couldn't take away her cancer. And it had me thinking of, a variety of things as we do. I went to all the way back to Ford of what's inevitable suffering and what's suffering we may be able to do something about, or neurotic suffering. I didn't say that either, but that's how I work. I have a lot of thoughts in my head, and I often try to get everyone else to speak, and dropping psychobabble and stuff doesn't help. Where famous people, although sometimes when they do groups of therapists, they like that to get a little education in there. I don't know if it helps at all, but sometimes it does provide a framework for people to hold on to something. I think in a recent group, I said, again, Lacan, that meeting with new client, that anxiety is being in the presence of the desire of the other. And that's what we do often as group leaders. We're sitting in the presence of other people's desires, and it's hard to know how to be with that, how to help with that, if we can help with that. But of course, when we're talking about death, and neurotic versus inevitable existential suffering. I ran through, the existential givens that we can't keep people from dying, that hopefully we can give people more freedom and more choice and see the consequences of their choices and take some level of responsibility for their lives and their choices. Hopefully, in groups, we can reduce this existential isolation and aloneness, but we can never fully take it away. And sometimes we move from confusing situations or discord in the group to making some meaning or making some sense out of this. And that may be workable or somewhat helpful. But, in my view, which I would think is both Buddhist and postmodern, is probably not completely the accurate narrative. I'm paying attention in the group. I'm thinking about these ideas. So then I thought about, in Buddhism, what's known as the 3 marks of existence. Many translations, but one is impermanence, that in that group, people were reflecting being with the member who passed away in moments of being with that member and what happened and confusions and connections and sadness and us crying together and them eventually getting too sick to continue on in group. And this is the theme of the 3 marks of existence, of impermanence, that things are constantly changing. And in addition to maybe helping group members work with the existential givens and how we understand those, we're also potentially working with the 3 marks of existence. So one is being impermanence. Things are constantly changing. And I pull a link here, which may be pushing it between existential groups and Buddhist influence groups, is that while things are always changing and things aren't, we can't impact things, we can't impact the culture, political climate the way we might like, that people come to group, they talk about something different, relationships form and end, that things are always changing. And people sometimes take a nihilistic view towards that. But beyond that is the, using Kirk Snyder word, existential awe, or maybe in Buddhist terminology, luminosity. Can we feel into this moment and how amazing it is that we are sitting together and trying to understand each other and feeling understood and connecting and facing our life's challenges? Another one would be this idea of the 3 marks of existence is the non-self, that we are constantly changing, that our relationships with people are changing, that we put labels on people. And I don't know how often in group it happens. Someone might say, oh, I see you differently now, or that you've changed so much in group. And that I think we work with, even within ourselves and in other group members, that people aren't solid label discrete objects, that they are constantly changing. We can't put this label or that label on ourselves or someone else because it's too simplistic. It doesn't always fit. It's not permanent. And in some way, in the Buddhist tradition, being able to deal with that groundlessness or discomfort of these identifications is a path towards suffering less, although it's hard to loosen our labeling and our desires and to try to see things in new ways. But I think the biggest one, I'm thinking about the 3 marks of existence that came up in that group, is in groups, people talk about, Buddhist word is dukkha, their suffering, their unsatisfactoriness. I can think of it as existential angst, and that this is a piece of life. This is the existential suffering. This is the inevitable suffering. And it's a lot to wrap our heads around, and it takes time. and that by being in community, we can better understand each other's suffering. We can feel seen. We can be creative in our approaches to it. But this fantasy that we're going to somehow live in a way that never, that permanently resolves our suffering is a untruth, is a myth, right? Without a doubt, through group, people change and grow and their relationships get better, particularly their relationships with themselves, and they make better choices and they move towards having more of what they want in life. But it's not like they ever get there and never have any dissatisfaction or never have any suffering again in their life. Perhaps if people were reaching enlightenment, people might feel that way, but that doesn't happen in my groups. Going back to this Lacan phrase I started with, it made me think of this is kind of what we do in group, is that we share, right? We give what we don't have. We give what Lacan would call our lack. There's incompleteness. This break from, in Lacan's view, maybe a more sense of integration that we lose as we move into language. But we share our pain, we share our suffering, our dissatisfaction, our unmet desires, our desires that we're considering while we're having them in some way. And it's very giving, very vulnerable. And everyone in the group, although there's similarities, they're suffering the way they relate with existential suffering and angst, and their lack is often different. And this is often very powerful in group to see how different people, what they desire, why do they desire it, how they work with getting a little bit of it, but not getting all of it, and really highlights people's subjectivity, both for themselves and I think also in hearing about this lack of other group members, it expands the group members to understand how other people are different than them and people in their lives and their partners and children and bosses and parents, that it really kind of highlights the subjectivity and really goes up against this assumed similarities dynamic that people can carry along with themselves. So we offer what we don't have, what we wish we had in group, right? And then people will quickly say, do this or do that, and be problem-solving fixers. And sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not helpful, but it will never completely take away the suffering, the dukkha, the existential angst, the lack, right? I think in some ways in groups, to use another model here, might be Melanie Klein, that we come in with some psychotic idealization of how we see people as good and bad, and we work through group, moving from what Klein called this depressive position of more absolute and simplicity and splitting and idealization and damnation to what Klein would call the depressive position. I got this wrong. The first position Klein's talking about is the psychotic position. We're not seeing the world as it is, but as we see the world as it is, that it's kind of sad what happens in the world. And I remember reading Klein's last few works and talked about this theory she created and saying maybe she could have added more to it, or a third stage of the satisfaction we do get, or the joy that we have and the connection that we have. And I don't want to put words in Klein's mouth, but the amazement of being alive and the meaning that comes with being alive. I might be overly putting existential words into Klein's last works here, but I think there's definitely remnants of that. So we give what we don't have, and then it's an offering. In Buddhist psychology, this is considered, as you walk the path, there's many, many steps, but one of the steps in the 6 parameters is generosity. which means not giving physical objects or advice, but being authentic, being real, being generous with who we are. We give what we do not have. And then the truth is that sometimes people are very connected and want to hear hear their pain, and sometimes they don't. And it's often unique and different than their pain. And their lack is uniquely their lack, and their suffering is uniquely their suffering. And we talk about it, and people begin to see their assumed similarities and their projections and their fantasies, and they sometimes like hearing what other people's pain, and I think oftentimes really, really do want to help. But for this new group member, they were very shocked. And I think I explained it well enough in the, initial intake interviews. But later in the group, as someone was talking about actually the death of a pet and a dog, they just burst out in tears. And we talked about the suffering that we hear in group that's often hidden when we're in social engagements and coffee talk, and maybe not the pain and the loss and the impermanence as maybe not highlighted in mass media's representations, and how people don't feel good about themselves or don't feel good about others or feel incomplete. And that I think they had some idea of like quicker change and maybe some kind of mass media idea of or some myth of psychotherapy that they'll gain some brilliant insight and then be forever shifted and changed in some way. But this is what we do in group in this way, that although I quoted Lacan that we give what we lack, what we don't have. From a Buddhist perspective, we give our dissatisfaction, our cravings, our desires, our clinging. And people may not necessarily want to hear all that, or they will definitely not be able to fully relate. And they'll have to deal with us being together in this incomplete, in this dukkha, in this depressive position, in this lack. But we offer this to one another, and we discover that this is true for everyone, right? We see it in the group. Everyone's incomplete. Everyone suffers. And for some group members, this is really profound, because they can have a myth, particularly formed in our culture, that other people are always doing great. And it can be very liberating for them to witness they are not alone in dealing with their dukkha. So I had to make this as a epilogue, and it seems like this group member who's very sensitive is talking about that experience, how they have worked with it, how the classic Buddhist idea of ignore it, push it away, avoid it, how they may cling to it and not be able to let it go, or how these are three jewels, passion, aggression. Not three jewels, three poisons, passion, aggression, ignorance, or how they try to take control and change it in themselves or change other people. And, Buddhism says this is three core energies, passion, aggression, and ignorance, that we work with our experience. I remember when early in psychoanalytic school, I read Karen Horney. It seemed very similar to grasping it and pushing it away, or moving towards, moving against, moving away from. I think in a Buddhist perspective or postmodern perspective, what a wonderful, pragmatic, and useful schema for understanding human experience, human tendencies. But it's not the complete picture. The complete picture is beyond that, maybe never to be captured in language, right? If we're thinking of Lacan and postmodern Derrida and language. But that doesn't mean, no, we have to give up. We can be together in this group and we can have the whole variety of human experiences with one another. Joy, awe, laughter, and pain. Okay. Hope the epilogue was worthwhile.